Yeah. All right. Well, look, we're well and truly over time, so I'm just going to whiz through this last bit. So here's a variety of ways that we can change the intent to try and achieve a movement change if there's one that you've identified. Can anyone come up with some balance and direction, something that would focus on balance and direction, some sort of drill that focuses on balance and direction? Yeah, actually it does. Yeah. Is there anything else?
Holding the leg kick.
Yeah, so the old Japanese special, take your leg kick and stop at the high point of your leg kick. So while the athlete is holding in this position here, he's developing the strength and the control of the muscles around their lower body to create balance. So while they're doing all of this, they're actually developing some conditioning to try and be able to control their body. So they just get to a high point of their leg kick, lock in on their target, and then go and pitch. As they get a little bit better at it, you could do it at the start and the end of their movement. So you could have them balance here, right? Pick up their target, lock in, and then finish balanced here with the sole of their foot up towards the sky. If they can be balanced at the start, they'd be balanced at the end. What do you think the movement's going to be like in the middle? It's going to be under control, and it's going to be in a direction towards home plate, isn't it? Very simple. All right, you change the intent, you change the movement. All right, so again, for me, at the very basic level, when we start with pitching drills, this is what I start with, balance and direction. This is our focus. The next one is rhythm and timing. All of those drills on those things that we just saw online, it's all just about rhythm and timing. It's trying to synchronize the movement together, trying to tap into the elastic energy of your muscles and make a more efficient movement rather than a very hard and forceful movement, which is just going to put more stress. Right, so throwing with less intensity but increasing the movement efficiency, so we're going to obviously develop more velocity and reduce the risk of injury. All right, so rhythm and timing, really important. Velocity, we can certainly, how many times have you either had a testing or something and try and throw for the radar gun and see how it changes the movements of your throwers? Right, so again, this is how, with your intent to generate velocity can change the movement. Right, so as soon as you get a radar gun out, their movements go from this to, right, not a good movement, not the movement that you're looking for. So again, in a situation where you've got the radar gun out and they're trying to throw it through the sound barrier, if you take the intent away from velocity, just try and throw strikes, just hit it, usually their movements go back to this. So you change their intent, you change their movement. Not to say that we don't want velocity, obviously in the long run we do. But we don't actively work hard, like the Jaeger program is specifically designed for developing velocity. We don't necessarily encourage that for under 14s. Got to have some throwing velocity, some volume underneath your belt before you really get to the point where you're throwing a maximum distance. We want to make sure there's some movement efficiency. The only way you develop movement efficiency is to throw more. So we need to see a few years under their belt, of playing and training at a fairly decent level. Things like arm slot and movement on the ball and all that sort of stuff, you can change the intent, but we'll talk about that another day. Okay, so again, if we identify when a critical movement change is required, we can change the intent until you identify the movement change that you want, then positively reinforce that repetition. All right, that's it. That's exactly what I wanted. That was perfect. Did you feel it? What did it feel like? All right, have a think about it. Go through it in your head a couple of times and then see if you can repeat it. Again, this is how we reinforce the positive execution of a skill. This is how we create consistency. All right, so if you're taking them through a series of drills like that sort of stuff, you identify the movement change that you want, and that's the drill that you focus on. That's the intent, that's the coaching cue, that's whatever it is, that's what you're going to focus on, and that's what you're going to repeat to the athlete. Continue to use that intent to reinforce that movement pattern and the feeling. What we're trying to do is associate the feeling that they have of that movement to successful outcome, or the successful movement. That kinesthetic awareness is the term for it, all right? But it's just the feeling of what it felt like to execute it properly. And then, as we talked about before, you can use something like blending, which is basically just the combination of the drill and their normal pitching movement to try and merge the two together. So you start at like 3 drills and 1 pitch, 3 drills and 1 pitch, 3 drills and 1 pitch. As they start to get more of a feel for it, transferring that feeling to their throwing movement, then you might go 2 to 1, 2 to 1, 2 to 1, 1 to 1, 1 to 1, and then just pitching, trying to maintain the same feeling that they generated from that drill, the one that you used the intent to change their movement pattern on, this is how we can use blending to increase the movement's repeatability. All right, their ability to take the appropriate movement that we're trying to change. Obviously, providing them with knowledge of results, so that might be things like bullpen charts, bullpen assessment charts, letting them know that they got 16 out of 24 they actually can hit their target. It's a reference point for where they are in terms of success. A velocity reading on a gun, letting them know where they're at. That's information about how they're going in terms of developing that quality. Visual feedback again is fantastic. So at some point down the track we'll talk about Baseball Coach Pro, the app for your iPhone or your iPad, that sort of stuff. There's a whole bunch of these different ones that are out there at the moment that just basically let you take your smartphone out there, take video footage, slow-mo, instant replay, compare it to different films. I would have liked to show you how to do it tonight, but we're out of time and I'm not sure I can do it on my laptop. I can certainly do it on my iPad, but anyone who wants to talk about how to do that, I'm happy to go through that with you guys. Providing the athlete with the visual feedback they need to see the movement inefficiencies that you've identified that maybe you can't explain to them in a way that they understand, providing them with that visual feedback is a really good way to help them self-adjust. All right, and the benefits of this sort of coaching approach, it helps associate the feeling or the kinesthetic awareness with successful performance, creates a visual image of successful performance. Again, we're reinforcing the positive execution. That's what we want. That's creating the blueprint for their future actions. It's a simple process for athletes that doesn't necessarily distract them from their outcome, their task, and it allows them to stay focused on that task rather than, like I said, be distracted by the... not too worried about this sort of stuff. It's basically just along the lines of all those things that we talked about. Again, there is room for extrinsic learning, explicit instructions within our model, but obviously limited as much as possible, particularly with younger athletes. So if we're talking about so if we're talking about a spectrum and we've got beginners over here and elite up this end, which athletes do you think are more prepared to accept, more capable of accepting explicit instructions? These guys. So these guys down here, even more importantly, how are we going to describe the movements that we want?
End goal.
Yeah, outcome-based, implicit, descriptive stuff, not the explicit, not the specifics. All right? So these guys can accept it. Phil Stockman, if you talk to him about pitching, he'll talk to you about this hip and that front knee and this side and that and blah, blah, blah. But he's had so much movement experience, he's capable of doing that. Our 13 and 14-year-old kids, not necessarily in that same category. They might be somewhere down here. So you need to think about a way to communicate with them more appropriately. I think that's just about it. I was going to talk a little bit more about action research, but we can do that at another time. Any questions at this stage about anything that we covered tonight? Good, perfect. We obviously must have done a good job. Thank you guys again for your time. I thank you guys for sticking around right till the end. I promise at some stage throughout this program we will have a coaches education meeting that sticks to a schedule. If we can get as many of you guys out at the sessions on the weekend, that'd be fantastic. But if you have any issues or stuff, make sure you let me know. But all's going well. We'll see you out there on the paddock. And if you guys have anything else that you want to talk about in more detail, by all means, get on the blower, email me, let me know, and we'll go from there. So thanks again for your time tonight, guys.